Hi, welcome to Origin Stories. We have Elaine Kugler here today. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a former high school teacher. I taught English for many years in the school system. And now I am an author of historical fiction. Um, I've had a great run as a teacher, and now I'm having a great run as an author.
That's wonderful. So what inspired you to write about this time period, the revolution in particular?
You know, I've always read historical fiction, and I have a lot of writers that I've followed, and just historical fiction just makes things come so much. It makes fiction more real if it's historical. It just has an element of truth to it or something.
Mm.
And so when I got the idea that I was going to up my writing game, it was natural for me to go to that. And then I decided to write about the Loyalists, kind of the other side of the American Revolutionary War, because that's where I'm descended from. I'm descended from Loyalists.
Oh.
And so you're not surprised that I'm descended from Loyalists. So it was really a joint thing. It was fulfilling my dreams of writing novels, and also of finding out more about my own history and what might have happened to my people way back when.
Mm-hmm. So how has your experience as a high school English teacher helped you as a novelist?
That's really a good question, because you know, when you decide that you're going to do this, you end up going down a road of all kinds of things you have to learn and so on. And I'm very open to learning things.
Yeah.
That's my background. That's who I am. But I did find that having been a person who loves words and who loves to write correctly and loves the nuances from words and so on, I think there's a real link between what I did before and what I do now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just it's made it easier for me in one way, but it took me about 5 years of struggling before I had confidence enough in myself
Yeah.
to say, yes, I do know how to do that. You
Yeah.
understand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what was the hardest part of the research process and how did you overcome it?
Oh, wow. I don't know that any of it was really very hard as far as the research for the novels. Because I mean, I'm a computer person. The last few years I taught computer studies, so I can take a computer apart. So I'm pretty comfortable with this stuff and with being online. And a lot of people my age are not. So that was a benefit to me. But so online research was easy. Going to the library, I found that really easy. I think the thing that was hardest for me was trusting myself and trusting my gut instincts, if you like, about what was a good way to go, and to write the stories in my voice, not somebody else's voice.
Right. Right. So, have you had any backlash from historical revolutionary era fans because you wrote about the loyalists instead of the rebels?
Actually, the exact opposite. Of course, our two countries, you know, Canada and the United States, we have this history, and everybody knows we have the longest undefended border in the world, and we all know that, and we've grown up with that. So no, I've had no backlash at all. In fact, the Americans seem really excited to learn about the other side of something. Yeah. So, actually, I'm kind of scared to say this because, you know, you never want to tempt fate, but I've had just a joyous ride with all the speaking that I've done and going here and going there and so on. And people have been so kind to me and have loved my books, and they seem to like listening to me talk and so on. So really, no, I don't think there's been any kind of a backlash. I think if I'd written this 150 years ago, it would have been totally different.
Yeah, yeah.
Too close to the time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Years later, you know, I mean, we've got over it. There's enough other stuff.
There's enough other stuff to worry about. You're absolutely right. So what was like a fascinating historical fact that you discovered as you were doing your research that you hadn't known before?
Oh, yeah, there have been a lot of those things. It's kind of what the author Barbara Kyle calls a nugget, a research nugget, something that you can just really grab onto it. And in my second book, I know we're talking about the first book today, but here's the second one. And so it follows right after the other. And in this book, the people move into Niagara-on-the-Lake, which is right across the Niagara River from Fort Niagara.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out a lovely story about an old lady in the War of 1812. The Americans were occupying Fort George at that time, and they were leaving because the British were coming closer. And an American, I think he was a general, I'm not sure, but he gave the order to burn the town. Now, that had never really happened before in war. Mostly they had people in the red coats and people in the white coat, or in the blue coats. They got lined up with their muskets and they shot at each other and hoped that somebody would, you know, get hit somewhere. But they didn't really go after private people and civilians and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So I found this story about an old lady who was ill. It was December 1813. And she was in her bed, sick, so sick that she couldn't get up and walk. And they got the word that the Americans were going to burn the town. And they had 1 hour to get out what they could from their homes and so on. So this lady, when the soldiers came to burn her home, she begged them to allow her to stay in her home, and they wouldn't. And they carried her and her bed outside, and it was snowy, it was December, and they put her in her bed outside, and they burned her house before her eyes. And they burned the whole town. And I mean, horrible things happen in war, and I don't care which side you're on, that has to hit you.
Yeah.
And so I took that incident that was a true incident, and I wove it into my story, and I had my heroine actually be there when that happened and so on, and I wove it into it. So these are the things I think that in my mind just resonate, you know.
Yeah.
It's really, really kind of a study of who we are as people and what we are capable of doing to each other. You know?
Yeah, but it's also it takes, you know, you can study history and look at the facts, but that doesn't really tell you much. It doesn't tell you the why or how like those facts affected normal people. I think that's one of the things I like about historical fiction, is that you get the story that goes with those facts, or a story that could go with those facts, depending on how accurate it is.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's why I always emphasize that the facts, you know, of when the battles took place and all this kind of stuff, I mean, that's history. So you can't mess with that. Yeah. But you can make the details of the fictional people such that you tell a story of what happened to ordinary people. And that was really important to me.
Yeah.
Because I think that we as individuals are very, very capable if put in a situation.
Yeah. So why will we love The Loyalist's Wife?
Well, actually, Men love it as much as women. You would think that with that title that it would just be for women, but it's really not. It's basically 2 chapters about Lucy and then 2 chapters about John. It's the story of he joins Butler's Rangers to fight for the British, and he leaves her behind on their farm in the wilds of New York State to try to hold on to their land. So people seem to relate to the situation and to the couple. And I had a neighbor. My husband and I were out for a walk one morning, early in the morning. It was about 7 o'clock in the morning, and he saw us go walking by. And this is after the first book came out, and he had bought my book from me, and I'm sure he bought it because he's a good friend, and he wanted to buy my book to support me, and
Yeah.
that's lovely. Well, he came running out of his house. Elaine, Elaine, he's shouting across the street, and he was just blown away because he said, I just loved your book. He said it was so full of exciting things that are going on, and he said, I just loved it. And I knew that he wasn't saying, I didn't expect to. That was pretty exciting. So,
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for telling us about it. I look forward to reading it and exploring more.
Well, I appreciate that very much, and I really appreciate you having me on your show, and let's do this again.
Yeah, so before we go, where can readers find you?
They can find me, actually, that's what I wrote down here. Good for me, Elaine. My books are on Amazon, and they're in the print format. They're on Kindle, and they are also in Kobo, because in Kobo, in Canada, Kobo is a fairly often used format for ebooks. So I did Kobo. I haven't done the other platforms. I heard a thing by Jack Canfield who said that, I don't know, something like 98% of his sales come from Kindle, like his ebook sales. And so I thought, well, if it's good enough for somebody like him, it's good enough for me. So, well, you have to really realize that you can't do everything. Even though we try to do everything, we can't. And so you have to make some decisions like that. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they can do that, and they're in other bookstores as well. They're certainly available online. I have a website, www.elainekugler.com. I have a blog. There's all kinds of ways. And I'm very fortunate because no one else has my name. So if you Google my name, you will find all my stuff on the web. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, isn't that awesome? Can you imagine? I guess I must have a really weird name.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
All right. Bye now.